which I just did, and then it's all on your end.
Okay. Just says live streaming offline. Like where the fuck do I go? Oh, there we go. We're good. We're good. All right.
We're good.
Oh,
Okay, comrades, we are gathered here to chat about where we're going with our channels and what the hell? Why am I getting feedback?
Are you listening to the
Oh,
stream?
I see. Yes. Okay, much better.
that'll do it.
Yeah, talk about possibly some current events, what we're doing with our channels, and yeah, any fun lefty updates and stuff like that.
Yeah, actually, Luke, we should probably talk about this past weekend a little bit.
Yeah. What happened with you guys?
So, we went to an event called the Midwest Left Assembly, where we all gathered on a land trust, and we all camped out over the weekend, and there was like workshops and a camaraderie, and just a lot of beautiful people coming together and learning from each other and learning to be in community. Yeah, you know, for me, it was like my first experience like that, just to be in community with like a ton of other leftists, a ton of other comrades, which was fantastic. My share of struggles, certainly being a little bit antisocial at times, but knowing that, like, you know, things were still popping off. You know, I think my favorite thing that really happened this weekend was to see a bunch of comrades just come together and cook for a ton of people. Just, you know, wasn't planned, just very impromptu, and it was quite the experience.
So how did that come about?
The event or the cooking?
Well, the cooking, yeah.
Well, I guess Luke should talk about that, because...
Yeah, Luke, let's hear it.
Oh, Luke, we can't hear you.
Luke, change your audio settings.
I mean, we can kind of hear you. It's just like almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Still can't hear you. Nothing. I'm not hearing a word.
Is your like internet just worse in your garage?
Well, we're getting the video, just no audio.
Right. You can kind of hear it come through a little bit, but well, while Luke is doing that, yeah, Luke and another comrade, and I don't know who else was necessarily involved, but they took it upon themselves to, you know, put together all of this food and just start cooking. Another comrade brought like a smoker and a bunch of meats, and they just started going hard. And then, you know, eventually it became this like really collective effort. Like, you know, at any given moment, there was 3 or 4 people helping out with either cooking or moving things around or pulling out tables to put the food on. And, you know, just the idea, it's like, you know, they're not looking for anything necessarily to come back to them. It's just, you know, it's for the community. And certainly, obviously, like having more cash money to buy food and stuff would enable people to, you know, for us to all eat more and such. But it was just a really, really good, you know, showcase of like really the values that we should be embodying, you know, on the left, is being in community, being giving, and just making sure and ultimately down to the fact that there's enough food for everyone, and making sure that everybody's fed. It's yeah, I feel like it has settled in a little bit more, like a few days afterwards, but definitely so an experience that I didn't have previously with people who have been developing a more like developing an anti-capitalist mindset, something that's outside of the norm. And it was encouraging to me, and I feel like I learned a lot even just being with those with comrades outside of the workshops that were set up, talking about different ideas and different things happening in the world, and how to organize. And there was a grief workshop, kind of dealing with the climate crisis that we find ourselves in today. And it
I
was
could use that.
Come again?
I said I could use that. Jeez. I was just thinking, a great climate? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, your mic's on fire, man. Jesus.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So it was fantastic. It was really good. I loved that I got to experience that. And thankfully it's an annual event as well. So I know that last year when they did it, they didn't have any workshops. They were just like, it was really last minute. Like, let's throw this together. Let's get everybody in one place and just see what happens. And obviously they had some ideas from last year to do more workshops and such. And, next year there's even more plans. There's more people involved. And we'll really see where it goes from there.
So so this was like the first time this meeting has happened?
This is the second time. Last year they kind of threw it together last minute, so they didn't have a lot of structure to it. But this year they added, opened it up to people who wanted to talk about, what they were doing and teach, each other, really important points of views and different techniques or strategies for getting things done. Me and Luke attended a workshop that they called Building the Commune in Southern Illinois, where they kind of talked about, what these leftist groups in Carbondale are doing, which is a smaller city, like only of like 20,000 people,
Jesus,
and what to do about some of like the real material conditions that they're experiencing there. And it was just super encouraging to know that like all these people are working super hard to make sure that things are happening, and that we're working together to figure things out. And it's super exciting, especially when I think if you are a leftist and you are pretty isolated, it can, you can get down on yourself or really overwhelmed with, all the crap that's happening, war and the climate, and it's really easy to kind of like give into nihilism and just meaninglessness. Whereas like when you are with people, it's a lot easier to feel like you are part of a group and you're not alone, which I think a lot of people in this atomized capitalist existence that we live in, that's like the default mode, and so trying to break out of that's super important.
What strikes me as significant about your story of in Illinois, or the meeting, is how and the food, people coming together to do this thing, with just out of the goodness of their hearts and just in solidarity, is just how rare, and well, not even rare, how it's remarkable how remarkable it is. Like it seems absurd that this type of thing should be remarkable at all. Is what I'm saying. Like I feel like in even other parts of the world where capitalism is less deep and embedded in people's lives, like this is the kind of thing that would happen in a rural community or small towns. But it's just such with how like you said, how atomized we are. It's just such an impossibility to really think of people coming together like that. And just making food for free for everyone, for a giant group of people.
Yeah.
And how, like, even if you just rewind the clock 100 years ago, slightly more, slightly less, like this type of thing it wouldn't be remarkable in most scenarios, and just it's remarkable that it is remarkable now, like
Yeah.
the silly situation we are in.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it felt really alien, and that's also strange considering, like, I did grow up in certain communities where some of that was present, but it was always within like the confines of a church, and so it was always
Right.
wrapped up in this technical morality and, oh well, people should work hard, and not the not the very unconditional, hey, we're humans, so everybody should be able to eat, everybody should be housed, everybody should be welcome, everybody, all these different things that, the left should embody. And they very much do when you gather together, and you organize in those ways. So I felt in a lot of ways uncomfortable. And, my younger brother was also there, and he's been a communist for much longer than I have. And so we had a discussion about how I am very much, this felt very alien. I kind of succumbed to some antisocial tendencies. Yet, the interactions that I did have were always pleasant and they were always welcoming. And, he mentioned that, oh, well, yeah, and I can understand that, but I've also been in these kind of settings before, right? Like trying to digest over a weekend with something that's pretty unfamiliar, and then trying to just get a feel for like what's the default way that we think about and relate to each other. And so in that setting, you realize, wow, these people really care. They don't want people to be lonely. I remember at one point, we had like a meeting, and they were talking about like, oh, here's the workshops for the days, and oh, is there anything anybody else wants to say? And somebody piped up and said like, hey, I know everybody can feel like lonely or alienated, and I sometimes feel like that too. So don't feel like afraid if I'm sitting around the fire to just sit with me, and we'll probably strike up a conversation, and so that thing was very vocal, and it was, this is the thing that we want to encourage and enable each other to do, because we will be stronger, as a movement if, again, we're being social and we're making sure that people are brought in and taken care of, both materially, emotionally, all these different things that we really need. And it's something, there's a lot of extremely online leftists, right? And it's understandable just given the atomized existence that, but it's something that I feel like we definitely need to do our best to break out of and help people get connected with other leftists and comrades in their area, and do things like this as well as other forms of activism and organization,
Yeah, I can attest to, I mean, before I found BreadTube, like literally 6-7 months ago, I mean, I had known about ContraPoints and Peter Coffin, like maybe a couple other communist channels. That's it. Before that, though, I felt really alone and alienated as a young leftist, in my city. I mean, I was the only person under like 60 that I knew that was a legit Marxist. Um, everybody else was just basically liberals. Like when I'd work for political parties, Green Party, the NDP in Canada, which is the Social Democratic Party, and I mean, anytime I brought up Marxist flavored stuff or really actual lefty flavored stuff, people would kind of look at me as if I was like, they'd be like, yeah, huh, okay, and then just kind of move on. Like they didn't really understand or get it or think it was serious, um, or I just seemed alien to them, or they seemed kind of alien to me. So yeah, even finding this space is very de-alienating, I think. And since then, actually, I wanted to say, I mean, you guys over the weekend, you had a great experience meeting other lefties. Well, I went to, was it a wedding? I think I had a wedding, and I drove. I do ride shares, and on my way back from my latest ride share, I picked up this Iranian guy. He was one of
Mhm.
my ride shares, and his wife from I guess they were coming from the airport in Toronto, and I had I don't really give a fuck what I'm not, I don't hide my leftism, and I was happened to be watching lefty videos on my cell phone literally as I'm driving down the highway. Just like had it on my dash there just so I could listen, and it was Mexi videos. Mexi talking about a bunch of political economy stuff, and I going through all of her catalog, which is all great stuff, by the way. Anyway, this guy was like, pipes up in the back. These are really good. These are really interesting stuff you got there. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I started talking to him. Turns out he was like a PhD student, um, and a leftist, a revolutionary Iranian, basically. And he was doing a thesis on Iranian politics and um, how the natural resources and water in particular are getting privatized, and the utilities are the privatization of the utilities in Iran and stuff. So we got to talking, and he's invited me to talk to his lefty international group at the university in town, and we're gonna get together and do some videos on left left politics in Iran now. And oh, he's also a Kurd, so we got to talking about the Rojava
Oh
and
man.
all kinds of great stuff. And yeah, so he's into all that. He knows that. He was surprised that me as a white guy knew anything about any of this crap. So he was very he was pretty stoked. And now I've got an in to a whole international student community of people working on various uh, international politics related theses, which could be a great content mill for my channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really liking your interviews, by the way.
Mine.
Yeah, you found some interesting people to interview, and it's been made for good content.
I just finished an interview today. With my uncle. He's the Reverend, the Anglican Reverend. And today we talked about the Bible and how what the Bible says, how we're supposed to treat the Earth and climate change and ecology, stuff like that. And then also I grilled him a bit on some of the Marxist critiques of Christianity and the Church as well. So that'll be a couple more videos coming out with him. And then the first interview I did was with the local city councilor Jeff McLaren, who runs the philosophy club in town. And for a long time, like 8 years, that had been my only outlet for intellectual. The only thing that was keeping my brain alive, really, other than watching Noam Chomsky videos, ever since university. Because I mean, all my friends are just idiots who like to drink. I like to drink and party, but I can't talk to any of them about anything remotely intellectual or political. Anyway, so through the year, every 2 weeks, we do different philosophers, different philosophy topics, and I'm going to try to get him on to talk about each of these weekly topics on my channel. So there'll be a bunch of philosophy sprinkled into my video essays as well, which will be cool.
That's good. He was an interesting debate for a leftist. It's good to see leftists debating someone who isn't as off the rails as Destiny. Because He didn't really strike me as a leftist, but like he understood and could relate to a lot of it in a good way, even though he didn't necessarily agree. Or did I kind of?
The philosophy guy, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say he's a leftist, but he comes from the philosophy side, right? So he's read a lot of the leftist philosophers, but more of the postmodern ones. So he calls himself, he's more a postmodernist, if anything. So he's less, to him, the way to make the world a better place is less about overthrowing capitalism as it is, thinking about the world in different ways and having these different ideology paradigms change and think about a lot more cultural, I guess,
Yeah.
stuff than material. Anyway, so my mission is going to be to convert him. To that he needs to, that full revolution is our only option. Yeah. So we lost our Luke. What the hell happened?
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, his their audio hasn't been working this whole time, so it's kind of been on and off. I guess I can say about this is, talking about plans for our channels, right? So I haven't really uploaded a video, and most of my videos aren't like very, very left. Sometimes, like I had a discussion about the Gillette ad a while ago, and that was very early on in my study of leftism and communism and such. And I've come a long way, and so I feel like I have a lot more to say. And trying to figure out how I fit into that and how I can do something that's really going to draw people in and help people to not only realize that capitalism is bad and that we need to get rid of it, but also why socialism is the answer and how much better things can be under socialism. And so if you guys didn't know, I also do a lot of gaming stuff with some friends, and it's very non-political. But there's times like, man, I want to spout off about how much capitalism sucks, when things happen in the games industry or something like that. And so I'm kind of at the point where I've been trying to think of new podcast ideas. And I think I've arrived at like a synthesis of like gaming and leftism, and thinking about like what game development and how we could play games if we weren't constrained, by capitalism. And also, what the consumption of those kind of pieces of media would look like post-capitalism, because we can't keep having like, oh, everybody gets a PS4 and everybody gets an Xbox One and we got to sell 1 billion of these so everybody can have access to them, but like, I still want to be able to play those games. So trying to figure out like, what will that look like? How can we do these things sustainably? How does, again, capitalism get in the way of having even better game design?
Oh, definitely.
All these different things. And so now it's just a matter of figuring out like what I'm going to call the podcast, and then outside of that, if I do more single take videos or something like that, maybe they're more in-depth critiques of a certain specific subject, or I might go the way of like Seriously Wrong and just have like a really well-crafted, scripted out for the most part, like podcast with different what do you call it? Like different skits and sketches and such like that. We'll see how that works. I probably won't be creating much until I move out of my current apartment. But I'm looking forward to actually getting back up on my channel and doing something that I think is really worthwhile, and something that I feel like I have a bit of authority on, that I can say this and people will actually listen.
There's a couple lefty takes video essays I've seen, really good ones on recent video game um, topics and stuff. Probably some of the same ones you've been hearing about, with overworking and some recent games. But this is one of these areas that Destiny is so stupid on. Like, of course, like just because we don't have a market system and people paying you doesn't mean like anyone who's into games and game development is still given the opportunity going to work on creating games, especially if there's a demand for it in terms of just people in their free time wanting to play games. And in their free time, even if there aren't people who want to play games, in your free time, if you and a group of other people want to create games, that's what you're going to do in that free time, since you have so much of it. And you could work years and years on games with a group of people. I mean, gaming is just software. Since we already have all the hardware from capitalism, we don't even really have to keep technological advancement going that hard, that far. But
right.
What we do need to do is spread it out evenly a bit more among the people who don't have it. So I mean, just sharing really is what we need. And that goes with everything else that capitalism has already created. Like we might still be using fucking yachts, but they're going to be shared. And same with the computers and computer games and the networks. Yeah, it's really not a question. Like we're still going to get great games. We're going to get better games because there'll be nobody breathing down your neck telling you what you have to do for some profit motive and telling you to make loot crates to drive down. Yeah.
So, and I think this really I think gaming really lends itself well to having these discussions because of the nature of the medium and the community surrounding it. So let's say, for example, a game like Beat Saber, right? I play a lot of Beat Saber in VR. And one of the things that makes that game so compelling is the fact that I can download a mod assistant, which has a list of different mods which allow for custom songs and anything else that you could want to do with the game. And then people out there will create beat maps. They'll create the actual songs that you play within these games for these custom songs. They don't get paid to do that. They do it because they enjoy it. They do it because they have the means to do it, and that's true for so many other games as well. If you've ever played Gary's Mod, like most of that game is just a bunch of people out in the middle of nowhere, wherever, collaborating online to create new content that other people can just download and experience together,
Right.
So, and then not to mention that, like, there's no scarcity when it comes to gaming anymore because it's software. It can be replicated infinitely for, like, little to no cost at all.
Right, and imagine all the game engines that people could be taking advantage of. Were they allowed to be totally open sourced, and not just what was it, the Quake engine or whatever famously was open source. If they were all like that, just imagine all of the awesome versions of different games and different things, mix and match, and creativity that we'd be seeing.
Yeah, I mean, we have the chance to remove all these different barriers to creativity and to human potential, especially the collective human potential, and people are actively like not able to do that because they don't have the means and things cost a lot of money and whatever other things you can think of. Like, we are limiting ourselves in so many ways by maintaining the system as is.
Jackie, you still there?
Yeah, man. Yeah, just listening to y'all. I don't know as much about the video gaming aspect of this, but I do really like a lot of like fan made games that are interpretations of like major things where, you know, maybe it didn't have a great story to begin with, and somebody injects some really good writing into it, and a lot of the gameplay is the same. And I think that those are just amazing, because you get to see what every individual person thinks that game could have been in a lot of ways. And it's just especially sad to see like when a group of people will work on making a game like that for years, and then the intellectual property owner just comes and sues their pants off.
Yeah.
And they weren't making any money off of it. You know, a lot of these things are available for free because there's no scarcity here. I mean, what you're paying for bandwidth, that's got to be the worst thing, because there's no like physical media.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't wait until all of this is free, exactly like you guys were saying. So
Jackie, I can see the top 5% of your head, and the rest is like pixelated. Maybe you might need to refresh your screen or something.
Honestly, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of goes with the vaporwave background a little bit. Just you know, some glitch art or something like that.
here, let me try to come in and out.
Oh no. I don't have a 2-person setup. There's just like 3 different like sections of your video. Like your face is like, oh, there, she's back. So I think with all of this, you know, like I think it's worthwhile to spend some time like prefiguring like the world that we want to see. But certainly, like, we have to take action to make sure that these things get done, right? And so a big thing is, like, organizing. And that's a big question I've had on my mind for a while is what does organization look like? You know? And I think sometimes, like for somebody like me, you see these more developed organizations or people who have been doing it for longer who, you know, do canvassing and they grow food or whatever, and it can be kind of daunting. It can be like, wow, I don't really know how I fit into this and how this should work out. But I listened to a podcast the other day from Seriously Wrong, talking a little bit. I think at some point they were talking about organizing and like what that really is, and I think it's good to like break it down to its like smallest pieces and the most basic examples. So if anybody's, you know, trying to figure out what does organizing look like, well, here's an example. Us doing this podcast right now. It's a form of organization. It's people coming together to accomplish a collective task. So in this case, it's a stream, you know, and there's different things happening, right? For example, I'm the one who has a lot of experience with OBS, you know. So I do. Steven, you do a lot of work on your channel. You have a bigger following than I do, and so you're hosting it, you know. And obviously, we're all putting in our own viewpoints and trying to find, you know, better ways to do this. But for the example that they gave in the podcast, it's literally, it comes down to this. You can do something, and then organizing is as simple as asking other people to do the same thing with you, you know? So even if it's just one other person, 2 other people saying like, hey, you know, we're gonna go do like a protest or maybe we're gonna do some canvassing, you know, and maybe that takes a little bit more, but just literally asking other people to do the same, you know, and that's what it comes to. And like, that was just mind blowing to me. Like it's pretty simple. Like it shouldn't be that mind blowing, but for someone who's like, wow, I don't know what to do.
I know.
Like this is significant.
Well, I think a big part of that you don't know what to do is you're imagining taking all of the roles onto yourself. You know, there is a lot that you have to do when you're organizing anything potentially large, and that is best benefited by having a large or a fairly large like organization or group of people with you.
Oh,
And
I
one of the
think I can
things
hear him.
that what?
Where's your thing?
Sorry.
Where's your video thing?
Oh, I'm kind of hearing.
Plug it.
Yeah, we can hear you. We just see the XSplit broadcaster logo though.
You were quite quiet though, Luke. A little bit better.
Ah.
All right.
Oh, there we go. We got the fam.
The video and
Cooperation. That's what this is.
Okay, I have to. I'll be back in a couple minutes. But Jackie, go on over.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Are we there?
Yes,
So-
yes, we
so
can
yeah,
hear
I
you.
think
You
that-
look great. You sound great.
Okay.
I think that one of the big parts that would help is just getting a team together of like-minded people. The more people, the more you can kind of diversify how that works out. And this is definitely something I've been thinking about for the last couple of years because it's something that I want to bring back into my life. Because I was very involved with Occupy, and that was me like intermeshing myself into groups of like 20 or 30 other people,
Sure, if you wanna go
and
for
just
it.
kind of asking like, you know, what do you need me to do? How can I help? It wasn't really like organizing it myself, and I felt kind of scared or concerned for some of the same reasons as you, I'm sure, of trying to organize things myself because I don't have like that whole organization behind me. But there's only one way to do it, and that's to start it, and that's to, you know, start an organization somehow. You know, whether it be through podcasting or BreadTube or a group chat or whatever. That's really what we have to do, and that's what it comes down to. That's really it.
Yeah, and I think it's important not to necessarily start with like, oh, how do I start an organization per se, but how do I do things with other people, you know? And it really comes down to like, okay, you can do a thing, I can do a thing, let's do the things together, you know? And then if you have certain, abilities or affinities, I don't know, we should be able to say that like you're better at this, so you should take the lead, you know, on this, and if you need any help, I can hopefully learn and back you up in that way, and then hopefully those other people become more capable in those situations as well. But certainly figuring out like who knows what's happening and what they're doing, right? So I again, I have experience with streaming, OBS, with Photoshop and Premiere, and I'm an audio guy. And so like I can offer my expertise or my services in those ways, and hopefully it makes the entirety of whatever we're doing together that much better, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the importance of the organization is just in having a place to ask the question, like, who can help me with this? Or just a place to ask, hey, is anybody good with audio here? I need some help with audio. And like, you know, as a microcosm, our group chat has been like that. The group chat that we organized this out of, or you know, even the Facebook group that I think we're all a part of, could be used in that way if we chose to. One of the problems with that, though, especially with like Facebook or even within this group or even the stream, we're all over the place. Well, I mean, with the exception of the two of you, and you are working together, you know, when you can, as you said in the beginning. It's kind of hard to find people that are around you. You know, it's easier to have like a big chapter than have like a bunch of local chapters, and that was fortunately one thing that Occupy was really good about. And I feel like we need something that spawns that many local chapters where you can have a place where you can say to the people in your community, like, you know, we have a really ugly community, let's do some guerrilla gardening. Who else would be down to do this? Who knows stuff about plants? because if I don't have a place to ask that question, how can I find a person who can do that? That's
So
near me.
Let me.
I mean, I
interject on that
appreciate
one.
your offer, but get over here and help me if you're really down for it.
Yeah, yeah. So here's something interesting about that.
You should boost your
is-
audio, Luke.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank. All right, how's that? Check, check.
That's good.
Great. So one of the things about that is, so I think that probably what we need to be doing in terms of like being on the ground doing leftist stuff is not actually looking for leftists, like just straight up.
Yeah.
Like there's something to be said for the idea of like, hey, I mean, so like for example, like in my particular context, like I met when we went to the Midwest Left thing, like I met 0 people from Joliet that I didn't already know. Like I mean Logan was there and Nolan was there, but I already knew them and so whatever. But like the thing is that when you take these ideas and you put them outside of the sort of like left right kind of dichotomy, and you're just like, hey, we should be able to self-actualize in our communities, and we should like try to do things that are helpful for our communities, and we should like you know do the guerrilla gardening, we should do thing like projects that make our communities better, just like objectively better. That gets people on board, I think, outside of just like a left right political thing. If you want to say at some point like people are going to figure out that you're the commies or you're the anarchists or whatever. You don't need to push that sort of as like I think what happens is that we take those things on as parts of our identities, like parts of who we are as a human, and that's fine and dandy. But like it's this thing over and over again of like, if you want somebody to understand what you're saying, don't call it communism or anarchism, just say what you're doing and they're on board with it. Like when I was working at a bar, like I could get people like fully on board with like some hardline Marxist shit by just not calling it that. And so like
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just like try to get people where they're at, and don't look for like have dedicated leftists who are like not afraid of those titles to like do stuff with, and have in your sort of like close group of people that you're going to do organizing with and whatever. But don't feel limited to only having, like, we don't need a bunch of like seasoned leftists with the social capital required, and all of the knowledge of Bookchin and Mao and whatever to like actually do this. We just need to like get people seeing the benefit of these things, and they'll be on board even if we don't call it whatever.
And I think that's super important, because I don't think we're going to win. You're not going to win mass support by just making better arguments,
No,
like people are just going to
we have to get so far past that shit, because
Yeah.
like it's over, it's done. Like we've been doing this shit for years and years, and like I've kind of been running my Facebook as an experiment for like a couple years now, and I just post like incendiary leftist nonsense like on my Facebook page, just to like kind of see what people's reactions are to it. Nice. And I mean, like, I post stuff, and sometimes I'm just like, oh, that one's a hot take, I mean, and like the point is not,
He's a meme lord.
it's just like, do you get people on board? Yeah, you get people on board, but the people that you get on board are people that are already kind of leaning in that direction anyway. Like I can post some spicy memes about the cops, but the only people that are gonna like really resonate with that stuff are people who like understand the criticism of the police as an institution already.
Are we talking about?
We're talking about the efficacy of like explicitly calling stuff communist or Marxist, and maybe just like hiding power levels a little bit, and like doing the stuff and then calling it whatever it is later, is basically the idea. Like I'm making the claim that probably what we should be looking for doing stuff is not necessarily people who are dedicated leftists to like help us do the legwork.
Yeah.
Get people in your community that are like down to do some gardening or something. Get them all together and just like let it unfold and see what happens.
Yeah.
I totally agree with your conclusion, but
Yeah.
I disagree with the whole like having to hide your power level thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Because
that.
I think that the real point is just that we need to do stuff.
Yeah. Oh,
It can't
definitely.
be true that
Absolutely.
theory doesn't sway anyone.
Yeah,
Action
Yeah.
that
Okay.
actually affect their lives will.
Absolutely.
So I think here's a good example is I was listening to an interview with some people from the SRA. And, you know, one of the things that SRA does is they do disaster relief, you know.
Right.
And so, you know, they come down and they start giving out food and taking care of people. And I think when they were kind of getting ready to leave, you know, met some people and people would ask them like, "Oh, why are you guys here? And who, like, what do you guys do?" And that was the moment in which they said, "Oh yeah, we're communists," you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
the thing that we need to be aware of is, one, you gotta read the room. You know,
Yeah.
if you're a bunch,
Yeah.
if you're among a bunch of comrades, then yeah, like, yeah, we're gonna call ourselves communists. We're gonna have these discussions, whatever. But a lot of people aren't gonna hear this stuff. But when our actions are forefront, if we are engaging with our communities and seeing, oh, how are people struggling and how can we organize within those communities to meet those needs, nobody cares that you call yourself a communist or any of those things. But eventually, you know, if you're around those people and you develop relationships, eventually it'll come up, and you shouldn't be like shy about it. Like, yeah, I'm a
Right,
communist,
right.
whatever.
Of course.
But you also don't need to be uber preachy about it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
You know what? I feel like there's so much stuff just involved with Christianity, like with just those few statements, that it's just like, I'm already doing that. Like I do that all the time. Like
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is like you don't have to find people like who are completely on board with stuff. Just get
Right.
people who are on board enough
to just do
to
stuff,
do
yeah.
the stuff. You know, and I think the thing is about it is that, like, you know, I don't know, something like Vanguard Party. Oh, and Steven left. Dang it. Shit. How am I supposed to make jokes about Stalin if Steven leaves? This is not what I want. God, why is my life like this?
It's okay.
Nothing's
Anyway.
ever perfect.
Nothing. I guess. So, yeah, like I think that's the thing that like really impressed me about the whole MLA weekend is that like, okay, now Steven's back. I can make jokes about Stalin. All right, cool.
One sec, I just want to let you guys know that I am doing one of the most dangerous activities known to man, which
Okay.
is cooking rice while not actually watching and being with the rice.
Oh
on the
wow,
stovetop.
you're a brave soul.
Very, very
You're
dangerous.
a brave soul. Is it
Cook
on
and
the
run.
simmer part at least, or is it?
No,
still
that's the thing. I haven't
oh,
got there yet.
Man. Oh man.
Ooh.
Whew.
Once it gets there,
Whew.
then yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Ooh.
what I was saying is like I think it makes sense. Like there is some part of, if you want to call it a Vanguard Party, there is some part of like having like dedicated leftists that are like down with the theory to like lead stuff. Cool. You know, like whatever. But you know, we just got to do stuff. Like we got to get off the goddamn internet and we need to start doing stuff. Like because the thing is that we have to keep in mind is that all the platforms that we interact with each other on the internet, besides like some of the direct stream, like I mean this is like, you know, this is maybe an exception, but most of the like social media platforms are capitalist run social platforms designed to like foster a capitalist mode of interaction. And like you can have the best takes in the world, but like if that the fact that it is a capitalist mode of kind of interaction with people is going to color how the like conversations play out on those platforms, like just straight up, you know, like Twitter and Facebook are probably the best example. Like Twitter, you can't have a discussion on Twitter, you can't have a discussion on in 180 characters. Like what are you hot?
Yeah.
Like come on, you just
What do you
can't. Like it's you just can't. And it's not designed for that. It's designed to just score points by dunking on people. And I think like honestly, like on some level, aside from yeah, exactly. Aside from just like having it as sort of like a very 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 base level kind of like advertising thing, I don't know how useful Twitter is to leftists. Period. You know, and even I think the same thing goes for like Facebook. It's good for maybe organizing events and stuff and getting the word out there for some stuff, but like it's not a platform for discussion. You know, it's
I
just not.
I'm gonna push back just a twinge here. I
Go
like
for it.
Facebook.
Yeah.
I have been proselytizing and propagandizing on Facebook. For
I know your
years.
fitness page. Your fitness page is real good. It's real subtle.
Yeah, well, I've
Yeah.
been doing shit like for years and years and years. But with the leftist stuff, like, it's not that I think I'm gonna convince people right away, but even just, but even just, you're almost normalizing in the same way that Fox News normalizes,
Yeah, sure.
fucking fascist talking
Yeah.
points.
Yeah.
I'm and leftists can normalize or at least introduce some of the ideas to
Sure.
the general public, even if they don't necessarily think they have great takes right away. Because every
Yeah.
once in a while you're gonna get them with something they kind of agree with.
Yeah. I mean, and you can do that, but you have to be very intentional about what you're doing. Like, you can have those takes, but your goal, like, I mean, so for example, like the stuff I post on Facebook is just incendiary, and there's like no part of it that I'm explaining anything, right?
Oh shit!
Oh, you're not from the Midwest. What are you doing?
Yeah, I was gonna say. Oh.
Yeah.
Is
No,
that like exclusively a Midwest thing, or did we
I
just
think-
like
No.
did
I
we
think
like
that's
claim
pretty-
it?
No, I
I-
think it's pretty exclusively
It's pretty-
Midwest.
yeah.
Jackie, do you say oh?
You know, yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that.
Oh, okay, so it's like you say it kind of like.
What's the context? Give me a
So,
context.
like I almost run into somebody in a hallway. Oh,
Oh.
sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of
or,
like a stand-in for
no,
like
no, that's
excuse
what-
me or like oh shit.
That
Yeah.
might be more universal. Like, we may not do it. You may do it a lot more than we do, but I've heard
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
super common, but yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like every other, like, it's like you accidentally bump into somebody or you remember, like, oh, I forgot I have to. Yeah, so I don't know. It's pretty like constant. I want to tell the story about feeding everybody at the MLA.
Yes, I want
Yeah,
you to, because obviously you were in
I'm
it.
sorry, Logan.
Yeah.
What a guy. Look at Logan, dude.
This
Orange
is,
shorts.
you might not
with
like
the-
it, but this is what peak leftism looks like right here.
Draw me like one of your French girls.
I can't get over your shorts. Those are
Yeah,
just
the
phenomenal.
shorts are what's my favorite part too.
Nice.
These are like my high school, like they got the
Oh, God.
Bengals
They
on
look
it.
like swim trunks from Walmart.
Youch.
They're like one of the only just like casual shorts that I have. So I wear them. I get home and I like take everything off, and I'm just getting comfy clothes. I have a
Nice.
like this is both from high school. This is more from my sophomore year when I played Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors. So I'm still stuck in high school, I guess. Even though I hardly talk to like anybody from high school.
Yeah, I hear that.
I'm still stuck in high school.
Sorry. Sorry, little guy.
Well, I guess I can before Steven gets back and you talk more about Midwest Left. You know, I guess I can just mention like I'm super excited to move to Rockford, right? And hopefully get more involved with some of the leftist groups there, specifically like Horizontal State Line. And I'm also really excited at the fact that like, you know, I'll be living with my good friend Brandon, who has a house and has a yard, which, you know, man, I just think about like even now, like living in apartments for the last few years, like I never had access to land, you know? And so even if it's a small plot of land, like that's significant. Like you get a half acre or something like that. That's quite a bit of food to grow if you do it right.
Permaculture,
Yeah,
the whole thing.
So, you know, when we left that afternoon on Sunday, we went over to Brandon's house, me and Nolan, and just hung out. At a certain point, I walked Nolan back to the backyard and go, "Hey, look at all this land," and his face lit up. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do some aquaponics and permaculture and yeah, and like."
Awesome.
And then
got
I
a
just started
bobcat, by the
thinking,
way. Like, I just want you to like, my
yeah.
uncle gave me a bobcat,
We gotta fix that up.
so like I can do stuff now.
We gotta
Wow.
fix it first.
Yeah,
What the hell is it?
yeah. It's like really old. It's like
Yeah.
an old like 70s or
No,
something.
yeah, we gotta fix it.
I gotta
first.
fix it.
Okay,
I
I,
mean, I
thought
gotta
you were
fix it.
talking about like a literal bobcat,
No,
and I
no,
was
no,
like,
no,
what
no.
the heck?
No, like the
When you
like
said
the,
you were gonna start doing stuff, I'm like, dude, like, are you gonna like sick it on some cops or something like
no,
that?
no. I mean, one could hope.
Badasses that
Yeah,
would
yeah.
be.
Yeah. Okay.
Fucked up the rice.
Oh, sad day. I'm so sorry. Okay, so I guess I'm telling the story of the food thing that I
Yes.
didn't get to do. So how this went down basically is there's this other dude there who was like my new soulmate. And
Yeah.
like yeah, it's very much like it was super cool. So he started talking about like he's like I got this smoker and I got like all these I got this like cooler of meat that I need to cook and I was like, "Oh, all right. I got some food." And then it just like kind of like snowballed into this thing where he was making something, I was making stuff. There was one other person who was making like jambalaya. Nolan was like making stuff with me. We had like a camp stove and a fire and a smoker, and like somehow we managed to like feed everybody. And it was like super 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 dope. And I was in charge of the vegan food, which is important to me because mostly vegan food tastes like shit. And I'm just like that's a travesty and vegan food does not need to taste
Tastes
like shit.
at all.
It
No.
can taste really good
Yeah.
and be like good.
You have proven that to me
And
multiple
so it's like
times.
I was like, all right, let's do this. So it was
Challenge
just
accepted.
it was a ton of fun, you know. I mean, it was just like it was really I think the most interesting thing to me about the whole thing is because like the like complete lack of actual hierarchies. Like I mean there is like, you know, obviously like I'm good at cooking and like the other guy Peyton, he was good at cooking and stuff too. And like you know, but we had like basically like a kitchen worth of stuff laid out like in kind of like a makeshift kind of camp kitchen, but like everybody could like use everything, you know. It was kind of just like, hey, this person wants to make this thing, all right, cool, they can do that over here. Here, this person needs a cutting board, all right, let's get him to him over there. And it was just like super like just like yeah, we were cooking the most of it, but like everybody else was cooking stuff too. And it was just really like organic and for me really interesting because like I'm used to being in the kitchen and have it be like I'm in the kitchen, don't talk to me, I'm doing this, like you know, there's not a ton of interaction from everybody else.
It's
or
an
like
alienated experience.
it's somewhat alienated. Usually have other people helping, so it's like me and a couple other people's are alienated, but it's very much like this is my job, like don't I'll talk to you, like we can talk and whatever, but like I'm the one doing this, don't try to do this. Like
Yeah.
it's like, you know, there's too many cooks in the kitchen or whatever, and it turns out that's actually okay and it works fine. You know, like it just was really like amazing how kind of like you just there's like certain moments where it's like, oh, it's really inconveniencing me that like you have the knife and the cutting board, but like I'm just gonna stop for a second, drink a little bit of this beer, talk for a minute with some other people, and then you're gonna be done, and then I'm gonna keep doing my thing, you know. And it was really cool because it was like it was bizarre. It was honestly, like Logan was saying earlier, it was just super bizarre because like it was like it's not only is another world possible, but here it is, or at least here's like the precondition, or here's like the beginning stages of it. You know, it's like when Orwell is writing about socialism in Catalonia, you know, you like taste this thing this one time, you know it's transient, but it still sort of like changes your motivational drives and sort of changes your ideas about stuff. Like, oh, this could be like what it is.
Well,
You know,
what's so sad is that this is the kind of thing is kind of it's natural and normal.
Absolutely.
Or has been through all of
Yeah.
human history until
Yeah.
fucking now, until
Yeah.
capitalism has gotten so deep and so alienated. Like
Yeah.
I was saying before,
Absolutely.
it's disgusting and it's sad.
Yeah, totally.
And
Well, and I think that's why it's like so powerful though, you know, is it's like you see how absolutely fucked capitalism is. Like it's just this system that is irredeemable, and like the rice is calling. Yeah.
So bouncing off of what you were saying about, like, oh, too many cooks in the kitchen, but the thing is, like, one, nobody was telling you to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was like, this is something I'm going to do. There was no deadlines. It's not like anybody was anticipating, like, where's my food,
Right.
It'll get done when it gets done. And there's no rush. You don't have to be, like, mad about people getting in your way because, like, whatever. Like, it's being used. The food's going to turn out fine. And then also, like, other people would help out intermittently, other people, oh, let's grab some tables. So somebody, while they're cooking, will grab some tables. We'll move some things around. At one point, I came up to check out what everybody was doing. And then you were like, hey, go grab that thing from my tent and crush some black pepper. So while you're doing things, okay, I'm helping out a little bit. Or in the morning when they were cooking corn. And I think it was, Matt, who was like, brought like a tinfoil, thing to grab all the corn, and it looked like he was struggling, like he was trying to do several things, and I was like, here, let me take that off. Like, you don't have to do this. I'll do it for you,
Right.
And so just being able to have like people around who, kind of just plug in at that moment to fulfill like a specific need, and hence everything kind of just runs a lot smoother, and nobody had to feel like, this is something that we have to do. It's just something that we've chosen to do and we want to do. And, as a community,
it was like, there's no boss breathing down your neck, and that just makes the whole thing so much nicer.
Oh, yeah.
Immediately.
I was having so much like crap at like work today, not for me personally, but I see it all the time, where you get some people who are like managers and they'll get really pissy at other people who do shit, and I remember hearing somebody earlier, like, this one of the workers was trying to see like some diagram for the room setup, and the director of that thing was like, got really pissed and was like, don't try to grab that on my hand, it's disrespectful, and then just kept talking about why it's disrespectful and all the things that this kid did wrong, and I'm like, what the fuck, like, chill,
get
like,
out of here.
Yeah, chill out. And also, like, even my boss, bless her soul, because everybody does it, where people get pissy about like a certain thing, or maybe setup hasn't done something or did something weird and it got in our way, and I've always been really chill, and then even more so as I've continued to move to the left. Like, does it matter? Right? Things are going to get done. They will get done, right? Yeah. Sooner or later, this little thing that happened that you got mad about, you're not going to remember this come a week from now. It literally doesn't matter. You can choose just to be like, oh, well, or maybe something does happen. Maybe there's a conversation to be had, like, hey, guys, can you consider this? And then maybe that thing doesn't happen again, But even if it does, like, who cares? Like, nothing was damaged. Nobody, like, maybe some people were inconvenienced for a moment. But, like, there's just no reason to be mad, to be angry, to be upset, to be blowing up on people. Like, guys, all chill out. And something else to consider is, a lot of these people have bosses themselves. So they get increasingly angry because they have to please their boss with their performance. And so the people under them directly affects their performance. And again, I think that's one of the worst things about hierarchy is, like, the higher it goes up, like, people aren't in their own head. Like, they're outside of it. They're like, oh, well, I have to think about all these different things that will happen to me. And so I will abuse
you for
people.
1 second. Like, I just find it's like somehow really funny that the three of us are hanging out, like literally just hanging out right now on Steven's channel, and he's not here. Like, there's just like somehow that's really funny to me. Like, the YouTube video right now is like the three of us talking, and Steven's just like off doing his thing.
And I'm here too.
It's
Dog
so
bless
funny.
it, man.
Seriously.
But yeah, I mean, so like I think I don't call myself an anarchist, but I am definitely incredibly sympathetic to the anarchist critique of hierarchy, and so I think a lot about hierarchy and what is a just hierarchy, what is an unjust hierarchy, and then what are the drawbacks of just hierarchy in general, and so when there's that many layers and it's so disconnected from people.
There he is.
Back.
There he is. There he's back. I just was joking. It's really funny because like we're just sort of hanging out like on your YouTube channel, like, and you're just like off making rice.
It turned out
Good.
Not-
I'm
not
so
too
proud
bad.
of you.
Hey.
Solid.
I didn't end up. I guess I used a little bit more water than I need, so
Good.
it ended up being okay.
All right. That's nice when that happens.
But
Have we
you start
talked
to analyze why hierarchy kind of sucks, and
Yeah.
the bad things it does. And certainly having a certain level of structure and organization can be good.
well,
if
sure.
you have like,
No one, yeah, absolutely.
certain administrators of sorts or people who are project leads, who are making sure that, as a unit things are functioning smoothly. And there's a myriad of ways to structure those things as well. But I think it's really important for any leftist, if you're a Maoist or an anarchist or any other, that we should be questioning those things, and making sure like finding the best way to hold each other accountable, while also analyzing what is the need, for this project or this organization, what needs to happen and how does it need to happen. And I've had Maoist friends who have been like, does somebody want to tell the anarchists that a command structure is not a hierarchy? That kind of thing. Like, it's not
Oh,
just if I
stop.
tell you what to do in this situation, that doesn't automatically mean it's a hierarchy,
That's not that. No, there's like no anarchists that are saying that. Just
Right.
stop.
I don't. Well, you know what?
Oh,
you,
stop.
you know who might be the person to talk to about this is Mr. Occupy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you really need hierarchies at all. I mean, a lot of people were very critical of that and said that, for example, because there is no hierarchy or structure to Occupy, that there was no core message.
Mhm.
But honestly, that was the best thing about it because the message got to become what any individual group wanted it to become.
Yeah.
And if you had a desire that was even stronger than that, you could form your own working group and just do it with other like-minded people. And I think that forged a lot more leaders because I remember a lot of the people that I was in Occupy with, um, a lot of them kept inviting me to like protest and activist stuff even after that stuff kind of died out. And one thing that I noticed is that a lot of those people that were a part of Occupy that kind of stood up as leaders during it, even though there wasn't like a hierarchy, they just kind of took burdens. Like, kind of the way you were in the kitchen, Luke. Like, you
Sure.
weren't the kitchen leader or
Right.
anything,
Not at all.
but you stepped up and took a big part of the responsibility. And the people like that are the people that I see leading local chapters of stuff like Fight for 15 or
Sure.
like even Black Lives Matter, like all sorts of things. I see. I don't think that movement would have created that many community leaders that were deeply invested in their community had it had a normal leadership structure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because
maybe,
I think that the lack of the hierarchy really encouraged that to develop on its own in an organic way. And I think that that's way more powerful. It really opened my eyes
Yeah.
to the fact
Well, it's-
that anarchist organizing could totally work even without the traditional hierarchy, because I really think that was only a failure by the standard of like a non-anarchist observation. I think from an anarchist
Right.
perspective, it was a perfect success, not a failure.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to keep in mind. I'm gonna let you go after this. I promise. It's your channel. But I just want to add this thing because it's important. So, like, one of the things that we talked about during the MLA was that like something can be like a meme of force rather than like a social movement. So, like, in some level, it was a social movement, but like you know, Occupy was a social movement, but in another sense, it was something that was not that. You know, it was like a collective resistance to something that
Mm-hmm.
didn't have necessarily a like a social goal kind of behind the whole thing, but was still like a this is us taking power, and like there's a certain kind of consciousness that emerges from that that I think is beneficial.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it might not be a success in a way like you seized the means of production or burnt down Wall Street, but at the same time, I think there was a lot of good that did come out of that, like you were saying. Go ahead, Steven. Your turn now. It's your
So
channel,
I
I suppose.
so Jackie, I think he's right to say it did show you that what's possible. Like you don't necessarily need hierarchies to make things work. However, but that I only see that as applicable to post revolution. While we're here in capitalism, I see it as a failure. And I just watched a great video, Richard Wolff, today, talking about um, his issues with Chomsky
Sure.
and anarchists in general, and organizing like the kind that took place at Occupy, um, and yeah, like these things are definitely, they show that you don't necessarily need hierarchy in the end, but to beat capital, to defeat this monolith and this hegemony, you really do need strong organizations, strong structures,
Sure.
um, with plans, with projects,
Mm-hmm.
with to be able to fight something like that.
Yeah, but I think when you look at it, like, so here's an example of something like this, right? There was I think two of the main examples I can think of that we were talking like of people who are doing some pretty intense organizing and like really making some like actual progress in their areas. One of them was from Minnesota, and one of them was the people down in southern Illinois. And the people down in southern Illinois were very explicitly anarchist, right? Like it was very clear that they are anarchists. But I think the guys out in Minnesota were not. But when you take a look at like their organizing and like what the stuff they were actually doing, it was very very similar, right? And I think what winds up happening is that you can have all the theoretical differences you want, but then like when like you actually get down to like what the organizations look like IRL, like there are differences, sure, but I think at least at the beginning stages like this, they kind of like a lot of them really look the same, you know, just like straight up. What are you doing? Worker co-ops? What else are you doing? Solidarity economy stuff. What does that mean? We're like trying to like help people and not just like profit and like be dickheads about everything and like save the environment and stuff and like have disaster relief. Cool. You know. So like I think there's we can sort of like bicker about the semantics of like what a hierarchy is all day long, but I think like when it really hits the fan, the organizing is incredibly and like at this point, I kind of like don't give a fuck. Like it's just time to organize and do stuff. Like and like I will totally work with MLs, I'll work with MLMs, but like you keep the larpy shit out of here and you just do some work. Like like as long like that's like for anybody, right? Don't larp, just do the goddamn work.
Yeah.
Just straight up. Like
Yeah.
and I think that's where we are as a movement, right? Like
Yeah.
we have the internet thing, okay, cool, but like now we actually like have to organize or just die.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
these are our options.
I think what the past couple of days on the Twitterverse and Leftube have revealed is that a lot of these people that are in the left community online are really not there for the they're playing at it. They're playing lefty. They're there for other things. They're there for because they're into their identity games or
Capital.
sorry.
Yeah. It's just social capital. Yeah.
Yeah, or they got in it through maybe a different route than than Marx or Bookchin or Chomsky. They came at it from nothing. Not to say that taking gender studies is bad, but if you come in it through these queer studies, gender studies, racial studies frameworks, and you don't get that strong class portion, which I think a lot of these people clearly didn't, then you end up with this liberal fake leftism that ends up taking people's attention in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even think you have to demonize the way they got in it, because I know plenty of people who are in like queer studies, gender studies, whatever, who are like Marxists.
No, right, and
right?
I'm saying there absolutely are good ways.
So like, no, I mean, my point just with that whole thing is like, I don't even think it matters the direction they came in it. I think the critique is just absolutely of liberal identity politics. You know, like it doesn't matter how they got into it. Liberal identity politics suck and are not useful. Like, and that's not to say that like intersectionality, which is literally just the statement that oppression sort of compounds on itself in a weird way, and we need to take those differences into consideration when forming our material analyses. That's like literally all it's supposed to be. Like, liberal identity politics or intersectionality could be something else, but like that. I mean, yeah, I watched the Angie Speaks Peter Coffin thing too. It was great. Loved it.
It was great.
Moving on, like, organize. Get off the goddamn internet and organize. And I think that's what's interesting is when you actually like organize, at least so far as the people that you meet and do stuff with are really chill, and they're like really into doing stuff. And like, if you want to argue about some theory over a beer, fine. Maybe not a beer because it might be straight edge, but like, whatever. But like, let's just do the stuff. Who cares about the thing? We just gotta like get this thing working because we have so little time to make any of this happen. And like that to me has been really interesting. I think one of the things that like where I've been inspired in my channel stuff is, so what I want to do next year is, for the next MLA, I want to just go in there and build a whole kitchen and feed everyone for the whole weekend without anyone having to do anything else at all. And so what's been inspiring to me is like, how do I build all these things? And then like, so I think probably what's going to come out of my channel shortly is a bunch of DIY stuff. Like, let's say you're in the woods and you want to build an oven. Here's how you do it. Like, let's say that you're in the woods. Let's say you're in the woods and you have an oven. How do you handle food safety? Like, I mean, so like sort of like all these like sort of very like DIY, this is how you do stuff things is sort of like where I'm kind of thinking about going next here.
Speaking,
yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead. I'm done talking. I've been talking.
No. You were talking about great stuff actually. You reminded me of I have a libertarian friend. He's kind of a douche libertarian.
Libertarian, like the gross ones. Like the right one, like the propertarian, the like right leaning ones that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, gross. Ew.
Yeah.
Ew.
God. I debate with him all the time on Facebook, and anyway, he turned his backyard illegally into a chicken coop and a bee. He started raising bees, and like he's better prepared for the fucking apocalypse than I am.
Sure.
As a lefty, he could take care of himself. I mean,
sure.
I feel like he's got. It'd be cool to have him on the channel almost to talk about some of these things, like turning your backyard, turning city spaces into useful spaces, and doing things with them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to go about it too. Find somebody on a completely different page politically, and then find an issue that you can both share, and then do it.
Yes.
Camaraderie that way.
And that's a way to build. That's a way to build kind of solidarity in itself.
Yeah, actually. Exactly. I mean, that's the thing is you get them with the solidarity, and then it's downhill from there.
Or uphill.
It's a good philosophy.
I really want you to get that philosophy dude on a stream at some point. I want to pick his brain up.
Yeah.
Oh my god. You don't even know. Like I want to so hard.
He knows everything there is to know about postmodernism.
Yeah.
Bro, I would want to be there just so I could like listen, and then I would probably take the next like 2 days. like understand like 5 minutes. Like probably.
That's how it goes, though. I mean, so I just started reading this book by this guy named Chris Pratt on logic, and sort of like the general idea is like how to decolonize logic, or like the ways that logic, even the study of logic, historically has contributed to colonialism. It's so good.
Oh yeah, Jeff
Oh
would
my
have
god, it's so good.
Jeff would have a lot to say about that.
I would love to have a chat about that. I'm actually like, so for my class at SAIC, I'm the last day I have planned like decolonizing logic, and I don't know enough to actually teach that class yet, but I'm like hoping that putting it in the syllabus is like enough, like, all right, I need to like do this and get this thing. But I would love to have that. That
Wait,
would be
you're
so cool.
thinking of a different Chris Pratt than I
No,
am.
yeah, totally different, Chris. Not the Guardians
Not
guy.
the Guardian.
Yeah,
The
not
guy
Star.
that-
Was the Star
No
Lord?
Star Lord. Yeah,
The
no
guy
Star-Lord.
that's church supports gender
Yeah,
therapy.
that one.
Conversion therapy,
Um,
that's what it's called. Bullshit.
Yeah. So, all right. So how do we build a solidarity economy across the so-called North America?
solidarity economy.
Yeah. How do we do leftist projects across so-called North America? That's the question now.
Wait,
That's a
Actually,
really
I think
big
we have a
question,
chance to
especially
possibly
with
Yeah,
where
and
we're
it's
at
also,
right
Wait,
now.
hang on. All right, one at a time, please. Jackie, you're on the bottom left for me, so you go first.
Word. Okay, cool. I think as long as we start as local as possible, that's probably for the better in building like solidarity between differing groups,
Mhm.
because a lot of local things don't really have a politic,
Yeah.
because they don't really have a national voice talking about them. Like, I'm sure there was probably some point where there were certain issues that are highly politicized now, like between the left and the right, really weren't because they hadn't hit the national stage yet. So a lot of those issues exist in local communities, and we should be addressing those because everybody's going to come out to help their community,
Sure.
from any background. And if they see that it's consistently leftists that are organizing this, and they see that we actually have a better way, then they might start, believing that we have.
Definitely.
We need to get Bo of the Fifth Column on fucking AM radio.
Oh my god.
yes.
Oh my
Oh,
god. I would
yes,
that
yes.
would be so good. Have you Okay, so AM radio is
That's what
A-
we could take over.
dumpster fire. Like, I was
Yeah.
listening to it the other day, and it was like literally I mean, I'm in this like logic headspace because I'm teaching this class, and it was literally like, okay, cool. Red herring, red herring, red herring, ad hominem, slippery slope. I mean, it was just like literally fallacy after fallacy after fallacy after fallacy after It was like, there is nothing you have said is consistent or valid in any way. Like, this is garbage. That's absolutely right. We need Bo the Fifth
Imagine
Column on
we
the AM
had
radio.
like, and then when Bo wasn't on, we had like Sean playing in the background because his videos are just in image, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
just
Oh, yeah.
All these talking YouTubers, three
That's a
arrows.
that's a great idea. Okay, so that's a great idea. I'm gonna look this up while we talk.
How do we start a fucking radio?
How to
channel?
start an AM radio station?
I've
You
actually
could
thought a
also-
lot about that, like doing some real like local stuff. Because there's a lot of older people who still listen to radio. It's for specifically that stuff, and especially for like
Truckers.
a localized
Yeah.
audience, like radio's still a viable way to discuss these ideas and get it out there. In terms of the solidarity economy, I think it's beneficial to like really break it down to like, okay, how do we have solidarity with each other, and obviously like part of the solidarity economy is building collective power, making cooperatives and then building federations of cooperatives, that kind of thing. Ultimately, Cooperation Jackson is a good example of that. But I think in between persons, we can start building that in other ways. Certainly organizing things and having things that maybe generate some sort of revenue of some sorts. But you can also look at it like, okay, we make money at our day jobs, and some of us have a certain amount of disposable income. So instead of just spending all that disposable income on yourself, think about what we could do if we got some of that disposable income and redistributed it. You know, maybe somebody doesn't have a microphone, but they're really good at making music or making videos. And so finding the people to throw down some cash to get that person that thing if they can't personally pay for it themselves, you know. Or even if it's as simple as like, dude, somebody can't eat, so I'm gonna pay for some food for them so they can eat. Like, I think that'll get people into like the mindset of what this should look like. And then so when you start to build up and say like, okay, I have mostly convinced Brandon to establish the break room as a workers cooperative, you know, and outside of that, that gives us a lot of freedom to say like, especially if I can turn him into a leftist, here's hoping. But to say that like, okay, well, we're making a certain amount of money. Can we take a certain amount of this and reinvest it, not in ourselves, but to say other worker cooperatives, you know, giving people jobs in those areas and having those associations. So building like a grocery cooperative and figuring out, hey, here's some land that we can all go in on. So I feel like solidarity economy just comes down to like, how do we pool our resources efficiently to build quicker, right? And certainly I don't think the solidarity economy is enough, you know, in the long run, but man, we need a variety of tactics, a variety of strategies to build onto this. And so, yeah, just thinking about like, how do we take what we already have and how do we, you know, give it up to the collective for collective goals.
Yeah.
Being cool for nerds in the chat says the DSA has mutual aid committee that does exactly that.
Nice.
That might be something to like look into as well.
Well, yeah, and the DSA is a pretty good like first step for organizing, or at least learning how to organize, or what an organ looks like, a leftist one.
On that topic, I'm actually going to my first DSA meeting next Tuesday.
Nice.
I unfortunately I missed the one last month by like a couple hours, but I'm really excited to be able to see what they're about.
See, that's really cool. What about if we started like local bus services? Like just like mass transit sucks. What if we just like made it happen?
Whoa. That'd be cool.
Like I looked into this and you could get a bus for like $4,000. Like it's gonna be an old boy.
We
but
just
like
need some money.
Yeah, I know, right? Like
yeah, I think you could build that. You could figure out ways to finance it. You know, I've seen my sister sent something because we've been talking about the framing of library socialism, coined by the Seriously Wrong boys. And so she sent me this link to a cooperative that right now they monetize it. Like you pay like a yearly fee. I think it's like something like $45. And it's just a library of tools, you know, so you don't need to own your own tools. You draw from this library. And certainly I think another way you could go about that is, you know, keep that in mind. If you can build libraries of things to fulfill people's needs, so they don't need to own these things, but they have access to those things when they need them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, shit, I've got enough stuff in my garage. I could be my own tool library right now.
Yeah. And then figuring out ways to finance that and pay people to maintain these things is super important. And then wrestling, you know, with that, because you don't want it to become something. You don't want it to become just another entity that's for profit, you know, or just trying to enrich yourselves. It should be for the good of the community, the good of the public.
In our Discord channel right now, Duck Like Dude has.
That's me right now at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm posting all of it. So I
That's
found the
neat.
the radio startup. It'd be like 18 grand a year. And then the buses. Here's a bus for $4,500.
Yes,
We
that's
just-
great.
we just
but
need
I'm a high
one
schooler
rich
and I have to be
lefty.
at school real
I
early
know,
tomorrow,
right?
So I'm
Like-
gonna.
All right, have fun. Yeah, I like
Oh no,
that would be good.
Jackie dropped.
Jackie's gone. Oh no.
If we had one rich windfall like Koch brother lefty,
Yeah, right. That could be
just-
Dunzo.
start
But
up
also,
a bunch of AM
like-
channels.
I mean, but like, what if we all just started like composting services and just like made and like didn't horribly exploit everyone else's labor? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a nice thought to say like, oh, there's this really rich, convert, who's now gonna just give their riches to the masses. But like, I don't want to depend on somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
For somebody just to liquidate their wealth. It's a nice thought, but also like, there's no way I'm wasting that. Especially when you get a view of like what like charity auctions are like.
Right.
I've done audio for a lot of charity auctions in the last year, and rich people are just not looking to get rid of their money. Even though it might be a lot more, like, I don't think it's a long-term viable strategy. I think what's more viable is to have networks like, kind of like subscription services, except for funding like other types of projects, So if you can get a ton of people to donate like a little every month, and essentially it makes it self-sustaining, I think that's a much better and more reliable way of going about it. I don't know exactly how you would all do that, but obviously like the internet is a great tool for that kind of stuff.
Well, here's my plan.
Let's hear it.
My plan is to do like Curtis was doing. Start a composting service. Use all that compost to feed all the ducks that I can get, and then sell bougie white liberals organic free-range duck eggs for like $8 a carton, and they'll go nuts for that shit. And then
I think that's a much better way of going about it, because then you're also building like the infrastructure to just feed other people, so you wouldn't have to sell all the bougie eggs. You could keep some of them and just feed people who couldn't afford that kind of stuff, and then again raise the price to just kind of cheat rich people out of their cash money who have money to throw away.
Can we just talk about ducks for a little bit?
I'm down with ducks.
Okay.
I dig ducks.
Like, all right, so ducks, like, here's the thing, right? Chickens lay eggs, right? And it's cool, right? But like, ducks lay more eggs, and they're bigger, and they taste better, and there's more things in them. And you could probably
taste better.
They do taste better. Yeah, so like, ducks are a big deal. I feel like the revolution might come about because of ducks.
Duck socialism.
Duck socialism. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Is duck socialism. Wow, I hate this. All right, never mind.
Take it back. Take it back.
All right, bringing it back.
And I think, but it is fun to think about like different ways that you can explain like these ideas and prefigure, in those contexts. It's why I get so hype at the idea of library socialism.
Yeah,
it's like, just build more libraries, except not just books, but tools and food libraries and, things that are going to meet people's needs where they don't have to think about it, and think about if you can feed people and you can house people and kind of just make that a sustainable thing without expecting that everybody's going to be able to contribute monetarily. Right. Think about the amount of work that people wouldn't have to do, and then that would free up more time for them to spend more time to build these alternative systems up, as opposed to, having to do work a 40-hour-a-week job. you know. And I think I try to do that with myself, is, you know, trying to find better situations where I don't have to work as much and I can do with less money, because it does free me up to do other more interesting things, and also to build a little bit of socialism along the way.
My challenge, and the thing that the like burden that I'm taking on, is that after the revolution, my singular job is to keep all the vegans eating like tasty food, but it's also going to be to keep Steven well fed enough that he can maintain all of the muscle mass that he's holding on to, so that he continues
I need to grow.
to be the swoletariat. So that's my like burden I'm taking on, is like literally keeping everyone fed, but also just specifically keeping Steven fed.
I don't
You
know.
might need to-
I object to that, just based on the fact that obviously Steven's a tanky, and post revolution tankies, those counter revolutionary bastards, they get the wall. So
I'm gonna use my tanky strength to smash you though. So
Oh god.
it's okay. I'm
It's
pretty
not gonna-
tanky myself.
Oh, you guys. I just want you to like, tanky does not mean ML, okay?
It doesn't mean
It's just so-
anything.
No,
It,
no,
like,
it does. No, it does mean something. Vaush actually did a great stream on tankies recently that I really liked. And basically what he was saying is tankies are the like sort of like basement dwelling LARPers that just like the aesthetics of like the Soviet Union, or like the aesthetics of like the sort of states, like the aesthetics of like all the different tanky things, you know, like the tank, like
they're
associated
also-
things.
they're also very quick to defend everything
Yeah.
Soviet Union.
Right, uncritically, which seems like a bad idea.
CJ Owens, well, here's. I don't think anyone, even tankies, will say, oh, you know, something's. Well, maybe not all tankies, but
Sure.
in general, people that
Not
get
all
called tankies
tankies.
will pretend to at least pretend to say, oh, you know, not everything was all good, but you know, overall it was good, or they had to do it, or we'll
Yeah.
give some excuses. People call CJ Owens in the Facebook group called Michael Parenti a tanky.
A tanky, yeah.
Which
I don't know
and
about that one.
Parenti is a bit of he's a I would not call him that. He's one of my favorite intellectuals, Parenti, but you know, he does defend Soviet Union, like while at the same time saying, you know, acknowledging that bad things happened.
Yeah.
But I think it is worth defending the Soviet Union, saying, you know what?
There's parts of it that is worth defending.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm not saying the system was perfect or whatever. I think the idea that, like, I don't know, there's a whole nother conversation to have here about sort of like colonialism and how Marxism kind of fits into that structure. You know, but like, I don't think at all it makes sense to demonize almost any social movement or like any movement besides, like, I don't know, Nazis as like, you know, entirely good or entirely bad, except for the Nazis, which were entirely bad. So and maybe US capitalism, which is pretty bad. So like there's subtlety there, right? And it's also hard too, because there is so much propaganda, and that's a real thing, right? There's a century of propaganda on top of all of this that's really hard to cut through. And like, I don't know, I mean, I'm not really into into defending or affirming the Soviet Union, because I just kind of want to make socialism happen now. And I kind of like, let's just go, let's just do it, this is what's in front of me, let's do it, you know. I don't know.
So I'll push back on that a little bit. Again, the Soviet Union's not perfect. There's nothing that's perfect about any of this. But I think what I do like to push back on for a lot of people is that the idea that the Soviet Union was some sort of like authoritarian, undemocratic like state, you know, or that it was like the most awful thing ever. Because man, there's a big part of me that I would so much rather be living under the Soviet Union than I would under U.S. capitalism. You know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like,
I just don't even know how to. Like, I have no idea what that was like.
Yeah. I've listened to a good amount of podcasts and had conversations about this. And you know, I even think that Stalin was a total comrade. I think he made some mistakes, obviously. And you know, I've heard some other criticisms that seem pretty legit, like you know, the idea that like you wouldn't be pushing for socialism outside of the Soviet Union, you know, like counter-revolutionary stuff. Um, but like I think where it really matters is people love to use the Soviet Union as like a point of reference for like why communism failed, you know, when in fact
It fucking worked.
Yeah, there was a ton of amazing things that happened because of the Soviet Union. And a lot of like the numbers of like, oh, look at all these people who died during famine, you know, all this other shit. It's just so unsubstantiated. You know, there's nothing that actually backs up like the Western capital narrative about the Soviet Union. Like when they say like, oh yeah, communism killed 100 million, like it's just it's so
that's just objectively bullshit.
yeah, it's all bullshit. So you know, certainly I think there is room for criticism about like things that we should avoid long term.
Yeah.
And obviously like it wasn't perfect, and it did end up becoming super bureaucratic, and that's not what we want.
Well, it wound up being super bureaucratic, and it wound up being sort of like strangely imperialist, which I think is like one of the main, like, and that's the thing that like is for me like is really strange about the whole thing is like, you know, I have like a strange number of friends who are Bulgarian, and like not one of them is like down with like state socialism of any kind, period. They're definitely like I've met a few that are like down with the like anarchisty, like more like libertarian, like actual like communism, stateless, classless society, whatever. But like none of them are down at all with like the state socialism thing. And I think
How old are they?
Anywhere from like mid-20s to 40 something.
I've seen a lot of interviews with I think it's Ukrainians, older Ukrainians who said, we legit had it better before. Like at least we had food, we were treated, we had, I think dignity was the main thing that they don't have now. And the rich might be doing better now.
Yeah, nobody else is, as per the usual.
Shit, what was I gonna say?
I don't know.
The other main point is that the reason that there's many reasons, but the main reason the USSR failed, and it wasn't really communist, but the main reason it failed was because it started liberalizing and opening itself up to markets. In the 80s, and that really accelerated the crash for their economy. In addition to going to war with Afghanistan.
Right, sure. Anyway, we should do like mass transit on a local level. That seems like a good idea.
I'm down for that. I'm down for like commie bus transportation.
Oh yeah.
Do you any of you guys? Like a good idea. Do you any of you guys follow Rebel Base, the YouTube channel?
I know the name. I don't know that I follow that. Like,
I think did you post regularly. A video of theirs?
I'm sure
I have.
Yeah, because I think Steven posted one and I listened to it. And yeah, I think I do now, but I don't know.
Was that the one with that super killer take on fascism and the art and aesthetics of?
No, but that was a good one.
That was one of the best Leftube videos I've ever seen. Period. I'm not like it was. That was honestly just like, this is fucking art. Like it was so good.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really good one. I had heard that take before, but like a
not
kind
like
of a
that.
tone down, not like that. Yeah,
not like that.
I knew about the modern art thing before, maybe from some older documentary, but
that was such a good video.
But with Rebel Base, he's like almost, I don't know, some kind of like energy expert. Like I don't know if he's into systems or what, but he explains very thoroughly why we can't, like, nuclear just isn't going to be the answer. And
I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and Annie explains what light rail in particular. We have like all these technologies we could be implementing fairly cheaply. These high speed rails, well, light rail and high speed rails. There's lots of ways we can be changing our transportation system completely. Basically getting rid of cars, except for very small, maybe people in rural areas, but like everyone else really does
Get rid of it.
won't need cars, and in fact won't be able to have cars in the socialist economy, because we're just gonna have to not rely on fossil fuels, and we're just gonna have
Cars
to.
are garbage. Get rid of them.
Yeah, I'd think about the idea of never having to drive to work again. And it's like,
It's a
oh
nice
my gosh,
idea. It's a
this
great
sounds
idea.
amazing.
It's a
Let's get
great
rid of
idea.
cars, everybody.
Yeah.
I grew
you
up in
can
the
have-
country, so
Yeah.
I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for.
No, I mean, I feel you, right? Like, I appreciate certain parts of cars. I like to drive. I mean, I would totally, if I had enough money to like get the cars, I would totally be into like drag racing. Like, I'm down, but like, or like drifting or whatever. But, they're awful. They're
Yes.
just like awful, and
Si-
you can't get away from the fact that they're awful. And like, we would be nice to not to like have cars that weren't awful, but like they're awful, and we can't have them. So let's move on.
Yeah, like in the future, like city travel, within inner city travel and between city travel, there's no reason to have cars. None.
Yeah.
With what we can do, going from city to country, yeah, you might need your
Sure.
truck or whatever the fuck. Then we might need to keep those around, and or make them electric.
Yeah.
But other than that, very very limited.
And turn all cities into like actual like vertical farms. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
repurpose the streets.
Just take the Sears Tower and turn that whole stupid thing into a farm. Like, just the whole thing. Just
The
like
whole thing.
Just the whole thing.
How much does upkeep of a building like that cost?
Oh, I'm sure it's stupid. I mean, I'm sure it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so in the after the revolution, are people going to want to do the work to keep these tall buildings going?
I mean, on some level, you kind of have to keep them from like crumbling and like breaking everything around them.
Is it going to be worth it?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on like. I'm sure there's enough people that are going to be like, I like the thing and I want to have it around. They're going to be the time in and like, whatever.
Will we need office space though in office buildings in the same way we do now?
I don't know. I mean, there's enough. I think there's like enough people who just have like a raging boner for cities that like they'll like do the work required to upkeep them, but it's gonna be like on them, where it's like, all right, look, you want to keep your city, you need to do the work to like keep your city because like.
So much of the work though that goes on in downtowns, in those in skyscrapers,
It's pointless.
Is bullshit jobs.
Totally.
It's money making jobs.
Totally.
It's jobs about that supporting capital.
Yeah.
Supporting
Take every
capitalism.
stock market and turn it into a farm.
Yeah, like none of these jobs make any. I mean, okay, there will be jobs in the new economy, possibly for planning, like Amazon,
Sure.
distributing resources. There are going to have to be people figuring that out with systems.
Yes.
But that's not going to take up entire cities.
No.
And so, like, what the hell will a new economy need these buildings for? It's hard to
Food
say.
production is what they will need it for. They will need it for food production. Like, I'm kind of joking a little bit, but I'm really like not. The thing about like a city, like take Chicago for example, there's a lot of people in Chicago.
Sprawling city.
It's a huge city. And if you want to feed everyone in that city in like a very local, like an acutely local way, you have to take all of that vertical space and you have to turn it into farms, or like mostly everyone starves. Or you have
golf courses can be farms.
Oh yeah. Oh god, yes. That just talked dirty to me. That's what I like. Oh god. That's what I like. Yeah. Just take that perfect pristine lawn and just plant a bunch of trees and forests and shrubs and food things in the
Bring
middle
the
of
animals
it.
back. Take all the fences down. All the
Perfect.
fences.
Abolish
I like.
lawns.
Oh my god, that's what I like.
Okay, I was gonna mention this earlier. So I was talking about, I'll be living with friends. I have access to a yard, and one of the things that I kind of like dream of doing is, organizing within that immediate community with neighbors and stuff like that. And I think ideally, I don't know how possible this would be, but this is like the ultimate goal to work towards. Is like everybody has fences, right?
Yeah.
If you build a strong community and like build like strong relationships with those people around you, like imagine being able to convince everybody to dig up those fences and just open up that space and then be able to use that space for like any number of things. Maybe some recreation,
like much better things.
Maybe more permaculture, just feeding ourselves, like think about all that yard space that if you just organized well enough and in the process radicalize some people, what that community could look like.
That'd be so tight.
Yeah, weren't we talking about front lawns last time?
Oh yeah, I hate lawns so much.
Yeah, you had a bee in your bonnet about.
I hate lawns so much. God.
But that's one of those things that's going to be really
them.
hard for the middle class suburbanites to let go of. That's going to be that we're going to have to. They're not going to be able to. We're not going to give them the fucking water to water those.
I mean,
lawns.
that like really is like what it comes down. It's like, no, like you don't.
Well, I think it'll be a combination of, action and getting people to realize why it sucks, and then also making the alternative just that much sweeter. So one of the reasons I came over to socialism is realizing that, like, dude, how much better and cooler could things be if we got rid of all this capitalist bullshit,
It would be great. We could have 100-level parties in the tower.
In the skyscrapers.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
Huge parties with slides.
With slides, yeah.
Through all the levels.
Right, through the whole thing, and there'd be permaculture everywhere. It'd be dope.
Now, could you get permaculture on the floors, each floor?
I think if you were creative enough, I think you could pull it off. I mean, they're like, so a lot of these buildings have like tons and tons of glass.
Yes.
So I don't know.
Just
like
mirrors everywhere to keep.
I don't know exactly like how the UV works there, but I feel like there's like enough light in there that you could grow stuff in. I don't know the exact like engineering though. I could be completely wrong.
It's true,
I imagine. Yeah, I don't know.
All the new buildings are fucking glass, so.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, people who work in an office don't get a sunburn because they work in. So like, I don't know like how much actual like UV energy or anything is transferred, but I mean, if it's just like
let in UV rays.
I think so.
Do they though?
I don't know anything. Surprise! I don't actually know. I'm actually a philosophical zombie. I don't actually know anything, and I'm just reacting.
Can you get a sunburn through building windows?
I guess it depends on if they have UV protection or not.
Yeah.
The screen's breaking on my internet. It's not working.
Oh, sad day. Anywho.
Anyone have anything interesting coming up on their channels soon?
I'm just gonna be doing a shitload of DIY stuff. That's where I'm gonna be.
Yeah, for me, it's just really developing the idea of, talking about socialism, communism, and video games, and entertainment of the future.
That's a great direction for a channel.
Yeah,
definitely.
It doesn't. You could expand it though beyond video games too.
It'll probably
just like
be
entertainment.
Yeah, but I'll probably end up talking a lot about video games because that's like the thing I do, right?
Yeah.
But then also again, like, dude, there's tons of examples already of like proto-socialist elements within, like, that community, within that interest, right? I talked earlier about like mods. People don't like create mods to get paid. They create mods to modify their games, and they're doing that labor. And people are putting together some sick ass beat maps for custom songs in Beat Saber. And they're not getting paid for it, but it's for other people to enjoy. And there's other motivations outside of.
But Logan, that's
getting
not
paid.
rational.
Yeah.
Why would they?
Oh,
do that?
I'm sorry.
Anybody who thinks that the profit motive is real has not played Minecraft long enough. Like, oh my god.
Like people who say like people won't work if there's no money or there's no incentive.
Yeah. Like, okay,
you're
shut
a
up.
fucking idiot.
That's so stupid.
You don't
Like,
know how humans work.
That's just not how we do.
Yeah. Have you ever like passed the salt to your fucking mom at the dinner table?
Seriously, right?
Yeah, and asked her for $5 to do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Jesus Christ.
No.
That's not how humans work.
No, it's not. It's just like it's just interesting because and this is like what like to your point what you were saying earlier. Like it sucks just how kind of like alienated and like and sort of like embedded capitalism has become in our like consciousness that it's easy to make a claim that humans act completely opposite to like how we actually act and have it be taken seriously by anyone. You know, it just sucks and it's amazing and in some sense it's impressive. Like this incredibly impressive and get everybody so turned around like that. But like gross, let's change it. Anyway, what's coming up that's cool on your channel, Steven?
So much fucking shit. I'm so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like the Steven Pinker video is what I'm working on.
Yeah.
Steven Pinker is a stupid idiot. That's gonna be good.
And probably a pedophile too.
I hope so. Yeah, so that's taken up some time, and then God, what was on my list there of oh yeah, so the one with about blue skies where I got my clip, my video clip from from Luke here, and I'm gonna do that. Oh, and then I have to get sidetracked because the Canadian election's coming up. I had been meaning to make a video about the Ontario Premier Doug Ford for a while, and I've got a collaborator I want to work on that with as well. So that'll be coming up. We have to get that done before the election, and that's going to be mid-October. So
you got to get going on that one.
Yeah. So and then fuck. Oh yeah. So sexy communists and the politics of looks. That'll be an interesting one. What else? Fucking. Oh, obviously my Baby It's Dumb Outside series. Theory Plebe actually has he's planning to do basically a big response video to my series, but I'm only on fucking part 4, so I feel like an asshole for taking so slow.
That would be really interesting. Did he like talk to you about like what he was gonna say, or like he just say like, hey, I want to do this, or
he's been commenting along. He's told me, he's been commenting along on some of my stuff. Like I think he kind of agrees and disagrees with the mood, I guess, that I'm that I'm putting through. Oh, and then I definitely need to get a fucking solid, like my channel's called The Swoletariat. Like clearly I need to put in a fitness strength video for communists. Like that's gonna be like my channel, like, you know, opener, my main channel video whenever I get that done.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I haven't done it yet though is I wanted to get back up to the weight I've been meaning to, so I can actually look pretty fucking swole for the video. I literally got sick again this week for the 4th time.
Oh my god.
So I lost like 5 pounds there. So it'll happen though. It'll happen.
Good.
It'll be good.
That'll be fun. That'll be a good one. Yeah, that'll be exciting.
Yeah, I don't know. And there's like 10 other ones I've got scripts for. So yeah. I won't run out of content for a long time.
There you go. All right. Sounds exciting. So we need a good closer. It's a
good closer. What does chat say?
I don't know if anyone's in chat. If there isn't anyone in chat.
Being cool for nerds. How's that?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's in chat. If anybody's in chat, what should we close on?
about everybody name their top 3 favorite all-time video games?
All right, that seems fun.
Logan, you first.
Okay. So I have at least 2 in mind. One being Breath of the Wild.
Okay.
I think 2 is pretty solidly. I'm a big puzzle guy, and I'm also down for a good narrative. So Portal 2.
Okay.
And then outside of that, I think it's a toss-up. There's a lot that could really fill that spot.
Number 3, you mean?
Well, yes. And so it probably could be interchanged with a lot, but I think I'm going to go with... I've been really, really, really into the Doom series as of late. So,
like the original?
Well, okay, so I
the new
played Doom 2016 first. I played it earlier this year, but then I just recently played through the original Doom, and then I've been playing through Doom 2. So I think I'm going to go with the original Doom, because it's just like... Dude, that game holds up so well. And then just like the simplicity of the shooting, and then just how smooth that game is. Yeah, just what a classic.
Yep.
All right, so this is not going to be in order because I don't think I could order. But I'm going to have to go with Minecraft as one of them. And then I'm going to have to go with Star Fox 64 as one of them.
Good pick.
That one is so tight. Yeah, favorite video game. And I think I have to go. I don't know if I could pick one out of them, but I have to go with just the Souls game. Like Dark Souls. Jim Sterling just actually did a video on why Dark Souls is leftist propaganda, and it was like, yeah, real. But that was a good one. But those games have been like simultaneously like really satisfying and fulfilling and incredibly frustrating. But like there's definitely some of my favorite games. There is no game that I've played, I think, that gives you quite that same adrenaline dump and you actually beat the thing.
That's Dark Souls?
That's Dark Souls, or some of the Souls, like Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3.
Fuck, I feel like I haven't played any of these games.
Minecraft.
Yeah, pretty similar to Logan.
All right.
What about you?
I'm gonna go with number 2 is gonna be I have to say StarCraft.
Okay.
And maybe even the first couple Warcrafts. Like I count that all as the same game, really.
Sure.
I got the most enjoyment out of those, I think. And then number 1, definitely Baldur's Gate 1 and 2.
Really?
Count that as one game.
Huh.
I played those games so many times over and over.
Huh.
The old style Dungeons and Dragons version 2 and 3 gaming system, I think, was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
They should have just kept it at that. And then for 3, we're gonna have to go with some kind of Nintendo 64 game for sure. So Star Fox is good, but I don't know if it takes the cake. Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie might be the best. Oh fuck, Zelda's though. Ooh.
I mean, Zelda's, yeah. I mean, like, you've got Ocarina of Time and you've got Mario 64. And I feel like a lot of those other games, like Donkey Kong and the Banjo-Kazooie, like, I feel like they were just, like, directly, like, let's just reskin Super Mario.
Man, but they were, like, they did it in their own way. Like,
I mean, they did, and they were good.
Banjo-Kazooie was fucking great.
Yeah. I think I just like Super Mario 64 more than Banjo. I also have, there's, like, a few games that I have completely missed. And Super Mario 64, I literally, completely and totally memorized the entire game.
I love that game so much.
Yeah, I played that game a lot, but I never finished it.
Oh yeah.
Whereas
120 stars every time.
I finished Zelda Ocarina of Time a few times. I finished
Yeah.
Banjo-Kazooie a few times, both of them. Yeah, gotta be one
Star
of those.
Fox 64 every badge.
Yeah.
Every badge.
game's hard. That game's fucking hard.
I can play that, go down a route and get every badge on the route, just like. One of my friends played that with me one time, and he was like, "I thought I like knew how to play this game, but now I've seen you play this, and I realized like I had no idea how to play this game." It's like I played this game a lot.
Do you guys remember like the Nintendo and Super Nintendo fucking Star Wars games?
Which ones? Like Shadow of the
There was
Empire?
there was like a side scroller one. They were hard. They were fucking hard.
Yeah.
The one where you can actually be
X-Wing Alliance, or that was PC.
No.
Like Rogue Squadron.
No. But like Super Nintendo, like old.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't play too much. A little bit. I had video games.
Anyway, it's one of those games is my answer for 3. So I think.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like honorable mentions for me are Metroid Prime, first one. That game was so tight.
I still haven't beaten it. I'm currently on my current GameCube. I'm stuck on the Omega Pirate.
No, that game I don't just like beat games. I'm a total completionist. So like
yeah.
I've completed that game like on hard mode 100%, and it's like very satisfying. Yeah.
Fuck, I might do that with I might stream I could definitely take some days and redo Baldur's Gate 2.
Oh hell yeah. That would be tight.
Work some leftist commentary into it.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
That'd be so tight.
I'm sure you could do that pretty easily with those games.
I would straight up just like, what I would really like to do is just kind of get blasted and like stream Star Fox 64 and just like full anarchist on everyone. That just seems like it would be like a good time.
But like I feel like those console games. Oh, I guess you can. Do they have ways you can use the original controllers with your PC? Is that a thing?
I don't know with PC. I mean, I know there's ways that you can.
Like how the fuck do you play?
There's always a way.
There's always a way. Yeah, I mean, there's always a way. Anyway.
Like if I'm gonna play Star Fox, like I'm gonna want a 64
You're
controller.
Gonna play it on 64.
I don't want a keyboard's not gonna work for me.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
They also, I mean, if you're willing to cheat a little bit, I
Xbox
imagine.
is not gonna work. Oh hey, here's Jackie again.
Whoa! Hello. How did
Um,
that happen?
I don't know.
You
Hey,
might
Jackie,
be able
you
to
need
get away
say-
with finding like a USB N64 style controller. I don't know if those exist, but they exist for like SNES and NES and a
Yeah, that
myriad
should
of other
exist for
things.
64.
It should.
Jackie, what are your favorite 3 video games?
All time.
Oh God.
All time.
Nier Automata was so good.
Hmm.
I am really pissed off that I did not get to play that through to its like 3rd playthrough. Yeah. Man. Can I? You know what? Every Pokemon game is the same game, so I'm just gonna pick that
Yeah,
as a
that's
solid.
that's fair. That's fair.
I don't know. I don't have a 3rd one off the top of my head. Like individual.
What about Windows 98 pinball?
That was dope. I mean, that was good.
And
shit.
Spider Solitaire. What do you mean? That was where it was at. That was on everything.
I don't know
Oh,
about
what
that
a normie.
Oh god.
What about Minesweeper? Is anybody a fan of Minesweeper?
Vaguely. Oh, I played a little bit. It's not addictive, really.
It's too smart for me. I don't know. I'm not that smart.
Come on, the numbers don't get higher than like 8. It's not that bad.
No, there's no numbers past 5 for me. Like no numbers past 5. All
Jackie,
right.
do you have anything other than anything you want to talk about before we leave in terms of what you're doing on your channel next, other than what you said before?
Well, I am doing. I was actually like editing that video, and I just turned my phone back on from chilling in the freezer, and like turned the internet back on, and that's when I reconnected to this call. But so I'm working on that video now, but it's actually probably gonna be a little harder than I thought. I need like a lot of fill video, like protests and stuff, because I went on about it for like close to 20 minutes before editing. I just have so many good stories, and like I worked with 5 individual occupied groups over the course of like my time, my year doing this, and different working groups with each one of those, like for different purposes entirely. So it's going to be a big story to unpack, and that's something that I want to do over a course of like 4 or 5 videos.
Yeah.
But
Oh, really
I
cool.
started
Themes.
with this one just because I wanted something that I could do off the top of my head. I wouldn't have to because my next video on the American dream and trying to unpack and untangle the ideas of freedom, the American dream, and the free markets. Because I don't think that those things have. I think that we all probably agree those things don't necessarily have to be intertwined the way that they are at the very
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
or
Obviously.
that at the very least, there's a very poor understanding of what free markets mean, whether or not we can have them now with the way that the structures are like under capitalism,
Free
which is
markets
hard
don't
to
exist, really.
explain without getting into
Yeah.
that really stupid understanding of Adam Smith, who I don't understand that well, but like my understanding of the free market is that there have to be negotiations between workers and employers over wages, essentially, and there have to be a negotiation between consumers and producers on price, essentially. That's how the free market works, and we can't have that without bargaining power.
Mm-hmm.
And we may have had a certain amount of bargaining power at that time, but we don't have it now. So like
Yeah.
we need to decouple that very rapidly, and that's one of the things I want to do in that video. But I'm also waiting for a lot of people to like send me their feedback on the American dream, which is interesting to do on like Facebook, because it's not exclusively leftist. I'm getting some other opinions in there, but
Hmm.
it's interesting to see like over the years. I didn't think my friends on Facebook were very leftist. I feel like they're at least anti-capitalist. Like they're all
Really.
getting so upset about
Yeah.
capitalism in general. Like there is a minority, but they're at the very least anti, and that makes me very happy.
That's really cool.
But yeah, that's what I'm working on. So yeah.
Have
Solid.
you been following along since you left?
No, like I said, with my phone dead, I don't have an internet connection, so I missed a good half hour of that at least.
All right. Well, I gotta wake up early in the morning,
Cool.
so we should probably end this.
Alrighty.
End it all.
Yeah.
Well, good night.
Love, peace, and solidarity, comrades.
Yeah.
Solidarity, trans rights,
Trans rights.
and yeah.
Solidarity forever, trans rights. Yeah.
All right. Peace.
See y'all.
Peace.